What's going on is Edward from Boxing Fanatico, and in the wake of the controversy between Andre Ward and Sergey Kovalev, there's a lot of misinformation out there. So what I'm gonna do today is explain objectively how fights are scored. And if you don't have that information, you don't know exactly, this video is gonna help you figure that out. I'm gonna break it down and make it as easy as possible for you to know exactly how a judge is scoring a fight. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
And now,
here we go, guys. In boxing, especially what you watch on TV, there's a certain systematic setup when it comes to scoring the fights. I'm gonna explain this systematic setup as easy as possible. The Marquess of Queensberry's rules is a base for the Associations of Boxing Commission's rules that we use currently. I'm not gonna dive into the Associations of Boxing Commission's rules in this video, but I will do that in a future video. This video, however, is going to be strictly for explaining how fights are scored. And it's important that you know that it's me saying how fights are scored and not how I score fights. Because this is an objective overview letting you know exactly what to expect when a judge is scoring a fight. Now, because of the subjective manner of fights and specific style biases, some may feel that a lot of fights are robberies or controversy. And to an extent, that can hold a lot of water. Some fights and judging are on the extreme high in questionability. But with that also brings the audience ability to manipulate the idea of a robbery for any specific fight in which they want to prove their point. So if you're new to boxing, this video is going to be very, very insightful. And the judges are usually in the center location of this square. Now, you need to understand that they do not have instant replay. They do not have playback. They do not have slow motion. They do not have frame by frame analysis, nor are they given those beautiful pictures that we see after the fight. They have to judge with their eyes alone. There's a huge disadvantage to this and you being the viewer on TV, because this judge has one point of view. If I'm the fighter and I have my back towards the ropes and judge one is right behind me, slightly to the side, that means all punches in this angle, he's not gonna be able to determine if they're landing clean or not. He's gonna have to make a decision based on the visuals that he has available. Now, judges can have biases. And by bias, I don't mean that they're not being objective. What I'm saying is they can have a styles bias. Some people love power punchers who load up punches and try to go for a knockout. Some people like volume punchers, fighters who throw a bunch of punches around. Some people enjoy technically savvy fighters, people who control the pace, slow down, use their technicality and skills to control what's going on in the ring. Some people enjoy the predator style, where someone incorporates cutting off the ring throughout the entire fight and cornering their fighters and then unleashing. There's so many different types of fighting styles that a judge may have a bias for. With that in mind, you can determine what a judge's decision might be when the fights are really, really close. Now I'm gonna break down how the judging is done. Now in boxing, the rounds are done in an even fashion. So you'll see 4 rounds, or you'll see 6 rounds, or you'll see 10 rounds, or you'll see 12 rounds. It's even because it gives a higher possibility of a draw if a fight is very, very close. You don't see many 4 rounds televised fights. Usually those are used for people in the beginning of their career, and it's definitely not a world title fight. 10 rounds are used for non-title fights, and you see those a lot on televised programming. Stuff like the pay-per-views and all of that stuff, you'll normally see the undercards have 10 rounds. World titles are held with 12 rounds, and that is why round 11 and 12 are called the championship rounds. They call this the championship rounds because these 2 rounds are the most grueling, as the fighter is most likely tired and really banged up, and they have to weather the storm of those 2 rounds. However, in this business era that we see now, a pay-per-view fight may not actually have a title on the line, but because of its magnitude will still have 12 rounds. One specific example is the Shane Mosley versus Mayweather fight. However, because it was a pay-per-view fight, it was still a 12-round fight. Now let's go ahead and break this down. I'm going to give you a scenario. Although it's even setup and these amount of rounds are normally never used, I'm going to use 6 rounds to make it very, very easy and concise to explain to you. So you have round 1, round 2, round 3, round 4, round 5, and round 6. And in these rounds, we're gonna have fighter A, we're gonna have fighter B. Now, what they use is a 10-point must system. What a 10-point must system indicates is that any fighter who wins the round must be awarded 10 points. So there isn't a way that you get 5 points, or you might get 6 points, or 8 points, or 9 points. So if you do really good, you get 10. No, if you win the round, even if you win it by just a razor thin margin, to a judge's perspective, he must give you 10 points. You may not end up with 10 points if you foul someone, for example, and a point is deducted. The fighter who loses the round, however, is given 9 points, 10 and 9. Now, if the fighter is knocked down, they're given -1, which is 8. Now, it's very important for you to understand that this is 99% of the time a 10-8 round if someone gets knocked down. However, a judge actually does not have to give a 10-8 round to someone if they get knocked down. Now you might be saying that is absolutely ridiculous. How is that even possible? Well, if the fighter gets knocked down but completely dominates the other fighter in the round, there's a slim possibility that a judge might still score it a 10-9 round. And by slim, I mean you may have more of a possibility of getting struck by lightning than someone actually doing that. However, in the Manny Pacquiao versus Marquez 1 fight, Marquez was knocked down 3 times in the first round, but did really well in that round. So 2 judges in that fight scored round 1 a 10-6. 10-9, due to the knockdown, it went from 10-8. The second knockdown, 10-7. The third knockdown, 10-6. But one judge decided to just make it 10-7 and not go 10-6. And that decision actually made the fight a draw. Had he not done that, Manny Pacquiao would have won the first fight and we would have never gotten the trilogy. Now, judging is based on 4 factors. I know a lot of people feel that clean punching is the only thing, but it's not. It's clean punches, effective aggressiveness, ring generalship, and defense. Now, the idea is that all of these are to hold the same amount of weight, but it doesn't. Clean punches are usually always higher categorized and subjected in a higher value than all the others. But if you do all the others very well, that can elevate you. Clean punches is basically punches that are very, very clear, that are landing, and that the judge can tell these are landed punches. Ring generalship is someone who can control the pace and the style of the fight. So if you impose your style on the other fighter, then you are being a ring general. And to make that as easy as possible to explain, if fighter A is a power fighter that likes to fight really, really fast and throw a lot of punches and make it a brawl, and fighter B is a technical fighter who slows the pace down, and his style is to make sure that everything is slower and that things are done in 1-punch increments and little combination pockets, you know, and moving around and all that stuff. And it ends up being a fight where the power fighter is just imposing all his punches on you and throwing massive punches per round, then the power fighter is the ring general. On the flip side, if it becomes slow and the fighter who throws a lot of volume punches isn't throwing as much and is thinking too much and is getting countered every time he throws, and the pace has been really, really slowed down to the style of the defensive technical fighter, then now that fighter is the ring general. Effective aggressiveness is basically a fighter who is being very, very aggressive, who's throwing a lot of punches, who's pushing his fighter back, and is being effective at the same time, which means that he is landing those punches and he is making it uncomfortable for the fighter. And defense, of course, is someone who is able to defend themselves well and not get hit when the other fighter is throwing punches at them. Now that you know the criteria, understand that some judges favor some of those criteria over the others, but clean punching usually reigns supreme. Now, we have fighter A and we have fighter B, right? Fighter A is a power fighter. Fighter B is a technical fighter. Fighter A does really well round one. He's imposing his punching power. He's hurting the other fighter. The other fighter is confused, doesn't know what to do, and it is very clear that the more uncomfortable fighter in that round was fighter B. So as a judge, I may go ahead and score this round for fighter A, which means in a 10-point must system, he must receive 10 points. Now, did he knock the fighter down? He didn't. Did he really dominate the fighter? He did. One thing to note, if someone absolutely, completely dominates a fighter, they may get a 10-8 round, but this is also very rare. So fighter B goes ahead and gets 9 points. The person winning this fight currently is fighter A with 10 points. Now we move on to round 2. Round 2, fighter A is still being very, very, very aggressive. Fighter A now has knocked fighter B down. As a judge, I am likely to rank this round a 10-8. I deduct 1 point for the knockdown for fighter B. Fighter A won the round, so I must give him 10 points. So now in this scenario, round 1 has been given to fighter A and round 2 has been given to fighter A. So fighter A is now winning with a score of 20-17. Now, as a fan watching the match, you're going to be very excited. There was a lot of punches connected in round 1. It appeared he may have even hurt him in round 1. There was a lot of punches connected in round 2, and on top of that, he knocks him down. So in your mind as a fan, if not understanding the point system, you might say to yourself, boy, is this guy winning. Fighter A is absolutely dominating fighter B, which would not be a false statement. It is true. He is physically dominating him right now in round 1 and round 2. But you must understand, you have to isolate every single round. Although you are excited for fighter A or not excited for fighter A because maybe you have some bets on fighter B, whatever the case may be, you still have to say fighter A has won round 1. Now round 1 has been put on the shelf on the side. Every new round is a completely clean slate. So we move on to round 3. Round 3, fighter B has now started to make the necessary adjustments to keep from getting attacked from fighter A. Fighter A is now confused as to what is going on because his normal system of attack is not working the way it did in round 1 and 2. So fighter B starts to recapture some of the momentum on his side, and you can see the pace is slowing down. He is becoming the new ring general. Although the rounds may be closer, you can tell that his style is being imposed on the other fighter, which makes you the ring general. He is landing at a good volume as well. He is pot-shotting him, which is hitting the fighter one punch at a time. The other fighter is trying to get comfortable because he was recently comfortable, but now he needs to understand what's going on now from the new adjustments that fighter B has made. So fighter B goes ahead and takes round 3. Now the score is 10 for the first round for fighter A, 10 for the second round for fighter A, and then 9 for the second round for fighter A. And of course, if you win the round in a 10-point must system, the judge has to give you 10 points. So now it's 2 rounds to 1. So now the mathematical breakdown is fighter A is winning with 29 points and fighter B is losing with 27 points. Now we move on to round 4. In round 4, it seems closer, but fighter B is still controlling the pace of the fight. His adjustment has been done very effectively, and he's also readjusting to accommodate for the adjustments that fighter A is trying to make in lieu of the new adjustments that he made for round 3. Fighter A is still somewhat confused and cannot get into his rhythm, which in turn makes fighter A throw less punches than he did before, or throw punches without any accuracy because he's just throwing punches to see if he can get something to land to get a rhythm started. Although fighter B is doing his thing, he doesn't win the round so clearly. He never hurt the other fighter, but he does go ahead and take this round in the judge's eyes. So of course, 10-point must system, he must get 10, and because he didn't knock down his opponent gets 9 points. Now the total mathematical score for fighter A, who is still winning, is 38. The total mathematical score for fighter B, who is surging, is 37. Now we move on to round 5. In round 5, fighter B has now moved into a groove. He is completely controlling the pace of this fight. He is very comfortable, he is very confident, and it shows in his movements in the ring and how he is manipulating the fight. Fighter A is very, very frustrated, but still trying to impose his will, but ineffectively. He's pushing forward, but he's not landing shots. He's not landing clean shots, and when he does throw punches, they're not landing as hard as they did earlier because he is throwing caution punches and also test punches to try to create a rhythm that he had in the beginning of the fight. Fighter B clearly wins this round without knocking down fighter A, so in a 10-point must system, he receives the 10 points and fighter A receives the 9 points. Now, fighter B has not knocked down fighter A at all in the entire fight. And he has won the rounds by being the ring general, landing good shots, and creating confusion for the other fighter. The judges have now given the rest of the rounds to fighter B, and the total mathematical score without fighter B knocking down fighter A is now a tie of 47-47 with just 5 rounds. That goes to show you that just because someone has been very dominant in round 1 or round 2 doesn't necessarily mean that he has won the fight. You have to be dominant throughout, and you as the viewer and the judges themselves have to isolate every single round by round. It is one picture, it is one frame. When this frame is over, you have to put it in a shelf and look at the other round in a blank slate. Although our humanistic behaviors do want us to gravitate towards what is explosive and what is aesthetically pleasing and what the optics are for a knockdown and what someone is when they're piling on an attack, but we have to be very vigilant when we score these rounds and understand that every round is a blank slate. So now in this example, fighter B has tied the fight. Go on to the final round, round 6. Fighter B versus fighter A. Fighter A is trying to press his attack. Fighter A understands that he may have been losing the latter rounds, and he wants to ensure that he wins this fight. Fighter B is not allowing him to do that, however, because fighter B has now had 5 rounds to be able to time fighter A's speed, to be able to time fighter A's rhythm, and to impose his own pace on the fight. He is much more comfortable now against this fighter and understands what's coming, how it feels, and what he needs to do to get away from it. Fighter A has not been able to make the necessary adjustments even going into this final round. So fighter B goes ahead and wins that final 6 rounds. So now fighter A has won round 1, 2, and fighter B has won round 3, 4, 5, and 6. And in a 10-point must system, you must give the winner 10 points. You give the loser of the round 9 points. Remember, unless there was a foul, which is deducted by the referee, it will always be 10 points for the winner, 9 points for the loser. If there is a knockdown, you will minus 1 point for the loser, which will make it 8 points. If there is a second knockdown in the same round, you will minus 1 point for the loser, which will make it 7 points. If there's a third knockdown in the round, you will minus another point for the loser, which can make it 6 points. But remember, it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. With multiple knockdowns, there may be a leeway if the fighter is very dominant after those knockdowns, as explained in the example of the Manny Pacquiao versus the Marquez 1. So now the total tally is fighter A has 56 points and fighter B has 57 points. So the winner of this fight is fighter B. Although fighter B was pummeled in round 1 and was knocked down in round 2 and did not knock down the fighter, he still wins the fight by a mathematical score of 57-56. Now, with just 6 rounds being used, I showed you a system where a fighter gets knocked down early and comes back to win. Imagine with a 12-round fight. There's much more leeway for a fighter who does get knocked down early in the fight to come back and win. It's all mathematical. Just remember these key elements. Every fight is scored under 4 factors: clean punching, effective aggressiveness, ring generalship, and defense. Every round that is won must be awarded 10 points in a 10-point must system. The loser would have 9 points, giving him the ability to stay in the fight. If the loser has been knocked down, it will almost 99% of the time be -1 point, giving him, instead of 9, giving him 8, and so on and so forth per knockdown in each round. Every round is its own entity. Once that round is over, you have to pack that round in the shelf and look at the new round in a blank slate, isolated from every other round. This is how someone who is knocked down in the early rounds can come back to win a fight. Now, scoring a fight has such a subjective nature to it that you as a viewer may say, hey, but I feel that this person won the first round, second, third, fourth. But you have to understand, what does that judge prefer to see? Does that judge want to see someone who is a ring general? Does that judge want to see someone who's a power shot fighter? Does that judge want to see great defense? Does he want to see great footwork? Does he want to see someone that lands volume punches? You may have a specific style bias, but you have to understand that that judge may also have his own styles bias. Also, their vantage points are in different angles. You have a full angle off camera with movements, clips, looking at different locations, slow motion, replay. They don't have those advantages. So when you're watching a video of someone who slowed down the fight and counts every single punch to show you, hey, look, this person landed this punch and that punch, it didn't really land. It may look like it landed, but it didn't really land. It's an illegal blow. It was like semi to the back, and that's not legal. It has to be right on the rib. You as the viewer, you're getting such an advantageous view of the action. It's being slowed down. You're getting to see an accurate depiction of the moment. As a judge, you don't get to see that. You can't tell if every punch is a legal blow or not, because everything's happening very, very quickly. So those videos of slow down punches showing you who landed more punches throughout the entire fight is null and void for someone who is sitting and watching a fight with no replay, no pictures, and no frame by frame. Also, those videos that show who landed the most punches throughout the fight doesn't matter, because if fighter A landed 200 punches in round 1 and then doesn't land any more punches, it doesn't matter if fighter B lands 10, 12, 13, 14, and he only lands 9, 6, 8, and 7. The final tally is going to show 200 and something versus 70, 80 punches. Does that mean that fighter A won? No, because he did all his punching in round 1. So that means that round 1 is its own entity. You can't take those punches and roll them over to every other round. Every round is a blank slate. So I hope this video has helped anyone out there who doesn't understand the 10-point must system, which is widely used with the Marquess of Queensberry's rules and the associations of boxing commissions. Those rules will be explained in a separate video, but I wanted to make sure that I explained how fights are scored in this video to give you a better understanding for why someone might feel that someone else won, but why it is very, very plausible for somebody to come back from devastating first round and a devastating second round. I'm your host, Edward, and I'll see you on Monday for the weekly recap. Have a good one.